Guys like you don't usually walk out of here with those kinds of trucks, the salesman said, a smug smirk creeping across his face. His voice had that sharp edge of condescension, loud enough for his buddies in the background to catch and laugh. Across from him, retired Army veteran Frank Dalton gently gripped the tags hanging around his neck, tags that had once hung beside battlefield gear across 3 deployment zones. His hands, now weathered and shaky, had once directed convoys through sandstorms and chaos. "I just wanted to see the pricing," he said quietly, but even that simple request sparked a wave of mocking chuckles in the dealership. Within 20 minutes, though, that laughter would vanish, drowned out by the soft beep of a platinum card being swiped and the heavy silence that follows a lesson well learned. Frank Dalton, now 68, had spent over 2 decades serving as a transportation sergeant in the U.S. Army. His file was full of commendations no one ever asked about, the kind of quiet heroism that never made headlines. These days, he lived a simple life on a small ranch just outside Brenton, Texas. His house needed paint. The fence leaned to one side, but the stars on the flag in his yard never drooped, and the light above it was always on by sundown. He never talked much about what he'd seen overseas. Instead, he lent tools to neighbors, taught local kids how to bait hooks, and still rose at 5 a.m. sharp every day, even on Sundays. Black coffee, no cream, no sugar. His life ran on rhythm and honor, just like it had for 22 years in uniform. That. Tuesday morning, Frank put on his one good button-down shirt, ironed the night before, and slipped on his oldest but cleanest pair of jeans. He brushed the dust from his combat boots and climbed into his beat-up truck, the one that had gotten him through rain, frost, and 4 brake replacements over the years. That old truck had done its job. Now, Frank figured, it was time to give it a rest. He drove to Heritage Auto Mall, a place that ran patriotic ads on TV with waving flags and big slogans about respecting those who served. But when Frank stepped onto the glossy lot, nobody walked over. Sales reps were too busy, catering to guys in shiny watches and women in trendy coats. He got no smiles, no greetings. Just a lot of sidelong glances and backs turned too quickly. It wasn't unfamiliar. Frank remembered that same emptiness years ago when he came home on leave, dressed in uniform, walking through airports where no one made eye contact, where people tried to look past the camouflage, as if pretending it wasn't there would keep the war further away. Still, he wasn't here for attention. He found the truck he'd been eyeing for months, a metallic gray Ram 1500, 4-wheel drive, custom, tow package. He ran a finger down its hood, admiring it the way a craftsman admires a tool made right. Eventually, one of the salesmen approached, all tight hair, tight smile, and tighter judgment. "This one starts around $59K, the man said, voice dripping with assumption. "But we've got some older ones out back you might want to look. At more budget-friendly." He glanced over at his colleagues, clearly expecting laughs. Frank stayed calm. "This is the model I've been looking at. I'd like the full breakdown, if you don't mind." The salesman gave a short laugh. "Right. Sure, just browsing, huh?" Someone behind him snickered loud enough to hear, tossing out a line about pocket change. Another cracked a joke about whether Frank thought they accepted food stamps. It got nastier, something about bartering with homegrown tomatoes, then about inflation lessons for the war generation. Frank didn't say a word. He just stood there, one hand loosely touching his dog tags, the same quiet move he used to ground himself in war zones, bunkers, convoys. He waited, calm, still, unmoved. The kind of patience that doesn't come from yoga or self-help books. The kind forged by surviving firefights and watching brothers fall. Inside the dealership's glass doors, he could see them laughing. See their smirks reflected in chrome and showroom lights. He didn't need to hear the words to feel the disrespect, but there was someone else watching too. A receptionist named Ellie, barely out of college, saw it all from behind her computer. While her coworkers mocked, she watched Frank's body language, not confused, but calculated. The way his eyes tracked exits, the way he sat upright even in the plush chairs. There was something about him, something real. She broke protocol. Got up, brought him a bottle of water. "Sir," she asked gently, "has anyone gone over the details of that truck with you yet?" Frank gave her a nod, respectful but reserved. "They've been occupied. No bitterness, no sarcasm, just fact." Ellie caught a glimpse of the dull silver tags under his collar and the faint emblem of the 1st Cavalry Division stitched onto his canvas bag. "My uncle served with the 1st Cav in Iraq," she said quietly. Frank's face softened. "Good unit," he said. "Good people." While the laughter continued behind glass walls, Ellie printed the specs and the full price sheet. She walked them over to Frank and handed them to him quietly. No sales pitch, no expectation, just basic human respect. Frank took the papers, then pulled out a sleek platinum card from a weathered wallet, one tied to a military retirement account that had grown steadily over the years. 6 figures sat on that balance, and without raising his voice, he stood up, walked back toward the salesman, and spoke just loud enough to stop every chuckle in the room. "I'll take the truck. Full payment. Today." The entire room froze. Even the humming air conditioner seemed to pause for a moment. The salesman blinked twice, confused. "I'm sorry. Did you just say full payment? On the Ram 1500? He asked, voice suddenly unsure, almost cracking. Frank nodded once, the kind of nod that didn't need to explain itself. "That's the one I've been setting money aside for since I retired." No bravado, no flex, just the quiet delivery of a fact. A statement of intent as solid as the boots on his feet. The general manager stepped out from his glass office, sensing the change in atmosphere. He adjusted his watch and approached with a smile a little too polished. "Everything all right here, Todd?" he asked, glancing at the salesman, who now looked like he wanted to disappear into the carpet. The older man extended his hand. "Name's Frank Dalton, 22 years U.S. Army. I'm buying that truck today. Full amount, no financing. And I'd like the receptionist to process the..." "Saleh." The manager's fake smile faltered for a second. Ellie isn't technically a sales associate. She's still in training." Frank looked him in the eye. "She treated me like a customer. The others treated me like a punchline. She gets the commission." The silence that followed was deeper than any he'd experienced in the field, and he'd been in blackout ops. The salesman Todd opened his mouth, ready to protest, but the manager's sharp glance shut him up fast. Ellie stepped forward, eyes wide. "Sir, I'm not even licensed for sales yet." "You saw a man," Frank said, "not just old boots and calloused hands. That means something." That moment hit harder than any commercial or customer service training could teach. She blinked back the emotion, nodded, and followed the manager into the office to start the paperwork under his supervision. As Frank waited, a man in his 50s stood up from the customer seating area, posture stiff, movements precise. He walked over and extended a hand. "Staff Sergeant Dave Molina, 82nd Airborne, OIF 2007. He gave a crisp salute. Frank returned it with military precision, a brief but powerful exchange. One by one, others emerged. A gray-haired mechanic from the back who had kept quiet during the whole ordeal, an elderly couple quietly comparing minivans, and even the dealership's own security guard. They weren't just bystanders. They were veterans too, and they knew exactly what had just happened. Within minutes, a kind of informal gathering had formed right there in the middle of the showroom. Years of service, branches, battles, all exchanged in the unspoken shorthand only veterans understand. The dealership, once thick with judgment and arrogance, suddenly buzzed with quiet respect. The general manager, sensing the shift, approached again, this time with a different tone. Mr. Dalton, I want to personally apologize for the behavior you encountered here today. That's not how we represent this brand, and I assure you it will be addressed. Frank didn't smile. He didn't nod. He simply said, "The next vet who walks in here might not carry a platinum card, but they still earned respect. Treat them like it." The manager nodded solemnly, no longer pretending. "Understood." By the time the documents were signed and the keys handed over, the man who had once been mocked was now the most respected person in the building. Ellie handed him the final receipt, eyes still glassy from what had just unfolded. That commission, which she technically wasn't even supposed to earn, was going to cover nearly an entire semester of her college tuition. "Thank you for your service, Mr. Dalton," she said, voice clear and proud. "Both in uniform and today." Frank adjusted his cap, a grin finally breaking across his face. "And thank you for yours. Kindness is a service, too. Just harder to teach." As he climbed into his brand-new truck, the other staff stepped aside, watching in silence. Todd, the salesman who had started it all, kept his head down, staring hard at the floor tiles. Frank didn't say a word to him. He didn't need to. The lesson had already been delivered, but the story didn't end in that parking lot. Later that day, Ellie posted a photo online, Frank in his new truck, the keys in one hand, and her returning his salute. The caption was simple. He didn't want special treatment, just equal treatment. That single sentence sparked something no one expected. Within hours, the post went viral. Veterans across the country began sharing their own experiences of being overlooked, underestimated, or disrespected. Civilians chimed in too, pledging to pay closer attention, to look past the age or clothes and recognize the people beneath. A quiet storm of empathy swept through comment sections, group pages, and veteran forums. News outlets picked it up. So did a few veteran advocacy groups. One of them reached out directly to Ellie, and 3 weeks later, she received a formal letter, a full scholarship offer from a non-profit dedicated to supporting those who show respect and advocacy for military families. She cried when she opened it. Frank, when he heard about it, simply nodded and said, "Good, she earned it." As for the dealership, they released a public apology along with a new staff training initiative focused on customer dignity and veteran awareness. Todd, the salesman who had first mocked Frank, was quietly reassigned to the inventory lot out back, away from the showroom floor. Meanwhile, Ellie received an invitation to stay on after her internship, with a promotion offer, waiting after graduation. And Frank? He still drives that silver truck. Every morning before sunrise, he's out on the rural roads of Brenton, checking on his older neighbors, helping out where needed. But now, when people see that truck coming, they don't just see a vehicle. They see a story, a man, a message. That respect isn't something you ask for. It's something you earn, and sometimes something you remind others to give.